Decoding Rumi's Masnavi by Pirjan. Comparing the daily thoughts that come into the heart with the new guests who from the beginning of the day alight in the house and behave with arrogance and ill temper towards the master of the house, and concerning the merit of treating the guest with kindness and of suffering his haughty airs patiently. Every day, too, at every moment, a different thought comes like an honored guest into thy bosom. A dear soul, regard thought as a person, since every person derives his worth from thought and spirit. If the thought of sorrow is waylaying joy, it is making preparations for joy. It violently sweeps thy house clear of all else, in order that new joy from the source of good may enter in. It scatters the yellow leaves from the bow of the heart, in order that insensate green leaves may grow. It uproots the old joy, in order that new delight may march in from the beyond. Sorrow pulls up the crooked rotten root, in order that it may disclose the root that is veiled from sight. Whatsoever things sorrow may cause to be shed from the heart, or may take away from it, assuredly it will bring better in exchange, especially for him who knows with certainty that sorrow is the servant of the possessors of certainty. Unless the clouds and the lightning show a frowning aspect, the vines will be burnt by the smiles of the sun. Good and ill fortunate become guests in thy heart. Like the star, they go from house to house. At the time when it is residing in thy mansion, adapt thyself to and be agreeable like its ascendant, so that when it rejoins the moon, it may speak gratefully of thee to the Lord of the heart. Job, the prophet who was patient and well pleased with God, showed sweetness to God's guest during 7 years spent in tribulation, to the end that when the stern-visaged tribulation should turn back, it might give thanks to him in God's presence in 100 fashions, saying, "From love, Job never for one moment looked sourly on me, the killer of that which is loved." From his loyalty and his shame before God's knowledge, Job was like milk and honey in his behaviors towards tribulation. Whenever the thought of sorrow comes into thy breast anew, go to meet it with smiles and laughters, saying, "O my Creator, preserve me from its evil. Do not deprive me. Let me partake of its good. O my Lord, prompt me to give thanks for that which I receive. Do not let me feel any subsequent regret, if it shall pass away." Pay watchful regard to the sour-looking thought. Deem that sour one to be sweet as sugar. If the cloud apparently has a sour face, the cloud is the bringer on of the rose garden and the destroyer of the nitrous soil. Know that the thought of sorrow is like the cloud. Do not look so sourly on the sour. It may be that the pearl is in its hand. Endeavor that it may depart from thee well pleased. And if the pearl be not in his hand, and it be not rich, yet thou wilt increase, strengthen thy sweet habit. Thy habit will profit thee on another occasion. Some day thy will need suddenly be fulfilled. Thy habit will profit thee on another occasion. Some day thy need will suddenly be fulfilled. The thought that hinders thee from joy comes by the command and wise purpose of the Maker. O youth, do not call it worthless. It may be a happy star and endowed with imperial fortune. Do not say it is a branch. Take it to be the root, in order that thou mayst always be master of thy object of desire. For if thou take it be merely a branch derivative and pernicious, thine eye will be waiting to see the root. Waiting to see is poison to spiritual perception. By that method, thou wilt remain perpetually in death. Recognize it as a root, clasp it in thy bosom, and be forever delivered from death of waiting to see. As mentioned in the first part, the doors of thou must be left open with no absolute judgments on different thoughts, whether good or evil. Closing this door will keep these thoughts in mind and keep the human in an emotional swing. Rumi suggests thoughts should be treated as temporary guests. Sometimes what we assume positive can be negative, and vice versa. According to an old story, once a horse entered a person's stables. Everyone congratulated him on having a horse for free, but he said it was not obvious that it would be a positive thing and that it would be beneficial to him. A few days passed, and when the man's son was riding the horse, he fell from the horse and broke his leg. What a disaster, people said. The man again said that it was not obvious that it would be a negative thing and that it would end in his loss. A few days later, the state officers arrived in the village to recruit, but they did not take his son with them because his leg had broken. Again, people congratulated the man that his son had been discharged from the military. These went on and on. Thus, what we consider as happiness or misery may be the opposite. We need effort and activity in our inner life as well as everyday life. If we are constructing a building, we need to consume energy and move on with the effort. The friend loves this agitation. It is better to struggle vainly than to lie still. But sometimes inactivity is the highest effort. Efforts are very important in everyday life and society. However, sometimes our efforts make things worse. For instance, if we are lying under a tree and a snake appears, the slightest movement may cause us to be bitten by it. Sometimes in family relationships, the more we try, the worse everything becomes. In this poem from the Masnavi, humans try to move from misery to happiness, but every move makes things worse. Sometimes we try to keep the good memories and let go of the bad ones. But it is a big mistake. Rumi suggests that if one wants to stick to the image of happiness and release the image of misery, it will make the condition worse. Rumi's desire for humans is to reach a place where these movements and images do not affect them. Of the things making a person so sad, and is to stick to the happy memories of the past. When we are on a particular path, and we think of it as happiness or misery, we try to move on to happiness, but the same movement destroys the happiness, because some of these miseries are necessary for human success and can affect them. The thoughts that come to our minds must be laughed at. Rumi's method requires deep understanding. There should be no learning in these sessions. Sometimes there is no need to care about the seed that is planted in the ground because it grows within humans. For Rumi, it is important for a person to perceive themselves without a specific image and immediately. If one wants to achieve purity and serenity, one must set aside memories and experiences. Carrying these experiences will lead to the loss of purity. While simple and without armors, the human gets a tenderness and is united with the being and authenticity of life. The armors human wraps around themselves make them vulnerable. Human has the power of creativity, but these armors prevent humans from success. When we, as a drop, put on different armors instead of joining the sea, all things are ruined. The more one is tender and free of armors, the more powerful one's approaches are with the world. People are usually in search of power, for it empowers them to do whatever they wish. Politicians, clerics, and yogis are all seeking power. Rumi believes that human is the very creator of power, becoming the ocean by joining the ocean. Considering the following story from the Masnavi. How Azrael looked at a certain man, and how that man fled to the palace of Solomon, and setting forth the superiority of trust in God to exertion and the uselessness of the latter. One forenoon a freeborn nobleman arrived and ran into Solomon's hall of justice, his countenance pale with anguish and both lips blue. Then Solomon said, "Good sir, what is the matter?" He replied, "Azrael cast on me such a look, so full of wrath and hate." "Come," said the king, "what do you desire now? Ask." "O protector of my life," said he, "command the wind to bear me from here to India. Maybe when thy slave is come thither, he will save his life. Lo, the people are fleeing from poverty, hence are they a mouthful for covetousness and expectation. The fear of poverty is like that terror. Know thou that covetousness and striving are like India in this tale. The issue of becoming is not a bad thing in itself, yet as people refuse to face their original nature and purity, they become greedy. We are jumping from one branch to another, and we are not steadfast. An attempt which destroys and makes humans confused is not of any help. Human does everything to avoid poverty, but there is no need for such things because the human is the very creator of power. Mere curiosity will lead to nothing. What is important to us is the achievement of a bare being and the liberation from deceptive obstacles. Solomon commanded the wind to bear him quickly over the water to the uttermost part of India. Next day, at the time of conference and meeting, Solomon said to Azrael, "Did thou look with anger on that Moslem in order that he may wander far from his home?" Azrael said, "When did I look angrily? I saw him as I passed by, and looked at him in astonishment. For God had commanded me, saying, 'Hark, today do thou take his spirit in India.' From wonder I said to myself, even if he has 100 wings, 'tis a far journey for him to be in India. In like manner, judge of all the affairs of this world, and open your eye and see. From whom shall we flee? From ourselves? Oh, absurdity! From who shall we take ourselves away? From God? Crime! What we call logic and justice has nothing to do with the logic and justice of the universe. In material life, if a baby is born and dies shortly after due to a natural disaster, we judge the issues of being and nature in our way and question the justice of the universe. Yet the universe is moving beyond our thoughts. To be in tune with being, one must remember that misfortune is caused by the escape from oneself. It makes the situation more complicated and makes purity and perception unavailable. If we run away from ourselves, we cannot expect to take the next steps. What we understand from mysticism is a panacea for all of our illnesses. Mysticism reveals that there is a path for human inner evolution. The first step is not to run away from ourselves. If we regularly transform and wear new masks, no panacea and prayer can help us. Rumi does not intend to reject the good and the bad as we judge by our standards. He is going to make us aware of our forgotten inner powers to be solved in the universe, that the good or bad omens can have no reverse effect at all. Where we are accused, we can remain silent or get into an argument. Things get worse when we try to prove ourselves. If the criticism against us is acceptable, we should try to reform ourselves, and if not, we would better drop the arrow in nonexistence to get a better result. Our mystics, especially Rumi, believe in the human ability regardless of religion or viewpoint. Mathematics entered human life some 5,000 years ago, but this knowledge also existed before entering human life. It is not then possible to imagine a human's ability would take them to the moon. Science should not cause human beings to fall into evil. When we come to purity without any armors, we join the being as a whole. The path to success inside is different from the path to it outside. Every instance of becoming is equal to the achievement of something. When we are in the grip of thoughts, our only goal will be to gain support from the inner turmoil. That is why we look for positive and negative energies and do too many tasks. Rumi says that no great effort should be made because it is a rope to the human neck and keeps away from the fountain of life. The main thing in the bare being is for man to see the fruit of observation. It doesn't matter whether lying is good or evil. If the very essence of lying is found without judgment, it gives humans consciousness. If human beings observe themselves as they are and do not run away from themselves, it might be the first step to liberation. The thoughts always look for the shortcuts. Once addicted to drinking alcohol and overeating, some prefer to take pills and medications instead of abstinence and doing exercises. But this does not work in mysticism. Self-observation is the first step in mysticism and the path to the sea. Along the way, willingness matters, not wishful thinking. Diligence and preparedness matter, not efforts. We should not react to and argue against negative thoughts. Both happiness and sadness are transient and should not remain in our minds forever. Our mystical way is to join the sea. To cover up the mystical practices in Rumi's poetry is to prevent strangers from reaching it. We have come to a mystical view when we realize that the universe is an irony and that there is no self. Intellectual curiosity does not understand the principles of mystical programs and does not recognize the right path. Diligence and willingness are the prerequisites for attaining the truth as well as the power of the manifestation of the soul.